The rain had been falling over London since dawn, that kind of gentle drizzle that never quite stops but never truly begins either. It painted the city in soft gray tones, blurring the skyline and washing every streetlight into watercolor. Clara pressed her umbrella close to her shoulder as she hurried through the wet pavement of King's Cross Station, her boots echoing on the tiles. She wasn't late, not technically, but she felt that familiar pulse of hurry, the kind that comes not from time but from restlessness. It had been one of those weeks where everything felt like repetition, meetings, deadlines, faces she barely noticed, smiles she didn't mean. Her life, at 28, was organized down to the minute, yet somehow missing something nameless. She reached Platform 7 just as the announcement rang through the speakers. The 1802 service to Cambridge will depart in 5 minutes. That was hers, or at least she thought it was. She quickened her pace, brushing rain from her coat sleeve, fumbling with her ticket. Her train card slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the floor near a stranger's shoe. "Here," the man said, bending down faster than she did. His voice was calm, low, with that London accent softened by something else, Irish maybe, or Northern English. "Thanks," she said, smiling politely as he handed it back. He smiled, too, a faint, brief expression that lit his pale eyes for a moment. Then he turned, walking toward the next platform. She stepped onto the train just as the doors beeped and closed. The city blurred behind the glass as they began to move, and Clara finally let out a breath. It took her nearly 15 minutes to notice that something was wrong. The first sign was the scenery, the direction. The landmarks didn't look familiar. The second was the voice of the conductor, cheerful and unbothered. "This is the service to Brighton. Next stop, East Croydon." Clara froze. Brighton? She blinked, checked the digital display above the door. Brighton. Not Cambridge. Oh no, she whispered to herself, her stomach tightening. The man across the aisle looked up from his newspaper, amused. "Missed your stop already?" She laughed nervously. "Missed my train, actually." The man chuckled. "Happens to the best of us." She smiled back, trying to hide her embarrassment. How had she managed this? She'd taken trains her whole life, lived in this city for years, and yet tonight, when she'd been craving escape, she'd somehow boarded the wrong one. Outside, the rain had turned heavier, tracing silver lines down the windows. She leaned her forehead against the glass, watching the blurred lights of the city give way to the darker shapes of the suburbs. A strange calm settled over her. Maybe, she thought, this was fine. Maybe she didn't have to turn around right away. Her phone buzzed with a message from her manager. "Don't forget tomorrow's meeting at 9. Clara stared at it, then locked the screen without replying. The hum of the train filled the silence around her, steady and rhythmic. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the stranger from the station, the one who'd handed her the ticket, was sitting opposite her. She hadn't noticed him bored. He wasn't reading, wasn't on his phone, he was just sitting there, looking out the window, his reflection flickering in the rain-streaked glass. "Small world," he said without looking at her. Clara laughed quietly. Or maybe just one with too many trains. That made him glance at her. "You're not from around Brighton, are you?" Not at all. I was supposed to be going north, not south. He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes this time. So you're escaping accidentally. Maybe, she said. Or maybe the universe just got tired of watching me follow timetables. He chuckled. The universe does that sometimes. There was something gentle about him, not intrusive, but present. He looked to be in his mid-30s, dark hair slightly messy from the rain, coat unbuttoned, a leather satchel resting by his feet. I'm Rowan, he said after a moment, offering his hand. Clara. Nice to meet you, Clara who boards the wrong train. She smiled. Nice to meet you, Rowan who finds lost tickets. They both laughed quietly, and for the first time that evening, Clara felt the heaviness of her day start to lift. The train rumbled on through the wet outskirts of London, and somehow, in that small corner of the carriage, time began to feel different, slower, softer. They talked, first about trivial things, weather, work, how London never really dried. Then about the small ironies of life, about how easily people forgot to look up from their screens. Rowan said he was a photographer, freelance, mostly travel and city life, and that he'd been away for months before returning to London. Clara told him she worked in corporate marketing, though the word sounded heavier than she meant it to. So what were you running from, really? He asked at one point, half joking, half curious. Clara hesitated. Routine, she said finally. The kind that looks like success but feels like nothing. He nodded slowly. I know that one. There was a pause. The lights flickered as the train passed through a tunnel, the world outside vanishing for a moment. When it emerged again, the rain had stopped, and a faint gold shimmer hung over the horizon, the last light of day breaking through. Maybe this wasn't the wrong train, Rowan said softly. Clara looked at him. What do you mean? Sometimes you don't get where you plan to go, but you end up where you need to be. The simplicity of his words lingered with her long after he said them. She turned back to the window, watching reflections blur between her face and the fading sky. She didn't know where this journey would end, or even when she'd turn back. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't in a hurry. The train rolled south through the dim suburbs, the rain easing to a mist that blurred the lights into long streaks. Clara leaned against the window, her reflection faint beside the city that slipped away behind her. Rowan watched the glass too, as if he could read her thoughts in it. You look like you're thinking about running away for real, he said. She smiled, the kind of smile that hides a sigh. Maybe I already did. He tilted his head. Do you often take wrong trains? No, she said. But I think I might start. They both laughed, softly enough that no one turned to look. At East Croydon, most of the passengers left. The carriage felt like a secret they now shared. Rowan stood and gestured down the narrow corridor. Come on. Let's stretch our legs. The train rocked as they walked, the windows showed ribbons of lights sweeping past. Strange, isn't it, he said. How travel makes everything look like someone else's life. Maybe that's the point, she answered. To see yourself from the outside for a while. When the carriage jolted, she lost balance for a heartbeat and he caught her arm. The touch was brief, steady, but it left a hum in the space between them. He smiled. You're safe. Thanks. Brighton station smelled of salt and rain. The air was cool, the sky a washed-out violet. They followed the glow of shop fronts to a late-night cafe on the promenade. The windows fogged from warmth inside, the radio whispered old jazz. Rowan ordered flat whites and found them a corner table. So, he said, stirring sugar, what would you have done if you'd caught the right train? Sat at my desk, answered emails, maybe gone to bed early. And tomorrow? Meetings. Reports. The usual. He nodded. You sound like someone living an almost life. She frowned slightly. Almost? Looks fine from the outside, he said. Inside, you're half awake. She traced the rim of her cup. You talk like someone who escaped that. I tried. Photography helped. You notice details, light on windows, faces on buses. Once you see the beauty in ordinary things, you can't go back to ignoring it. Clara watched him, the way the lamplight found gold in his hair. Maybe that's what I forgot to do, she murmured. Notice. They wandered the pier after midnight. The sea murmured below, black and silver under the lights. Do you ever think about leaving everything behind? He asked. Sometimes, she said. But I'd still be me, wherever I went. True. But maybe the version of you that finds a wrong train is already new. She laughed. You make getting lost sound poetic. It usually is. They stopped where the pier met open air. The wind lifted her hair, he watched her quietly. I think you needed this mistake, he said. Maybe I did. They stood together, listening to the tide until words felt unnecessary. They missed the last train north. She laughed when she saw the timetable. Fate's persistent. There's a little hotel near the station, he said. Old place. Clean rooms. They walked there through drizzle. The corridor smelled of lavender polish and sea air. At her door he paused. See you in the morning? Yes, she said. And, thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have a train to fix. When she closed the door she found herself smiling into the quiet. Morning came bright and sharp with gulls crying outside. She felt rested, lighter. Rowan waited downstairs with his camera and that easy half-smile. Over breakfast in a cafe facing the sea he showed her the photos he'd taken, wet cobbles, reflections, her silhouette on the pier. You took that? She asked. Couldn't help it. You looked like someone seeing something for the first time. Maybe I was, she said, and their eyes met. For a second the room seemed to still around them. They had hours before the noon train, so they walked along the beach, shoes in hand, the surf brushing their feet. She told him about her mother's saying, if you're lost, follow the water. Maybe that's what we did, Rowan said. Followed the water, just on rails. And ended up here. Sometimes mistakes are invitations. When they reached the platform again, the train waited in a shimmer of sunlight. Will you go back to your routine? He asked. She looked at the horizon. Not exactly. I want to change things, start small, take photos, write again, maybe travel. He smiled. Sounds like you've caught the right train now. What about you? I go where the light goes, he said, lifting the camera. Maybe I'll stay in London a while. The doors opened. She hesitated, then smiled. Thank you for finding my ticket. Thank you for missing your train. They sat together on the ride north, the city drawing closer with every mile. Her head rested lightly against the glass, his reflection beside hers. The skyline rose ahead, but something in her had shifted, the rhythm of her thoughts felt new. The same streets awaited, yet she knew she would walk them differently. Weeks passed. She bought a second-hand camera and began taking pictures, coffee steam, puddles, early light on windowsills. Each frame a small act of noticing. She deleted work emails without guilt, walked to the office instead of taking the bus, watched the Thames turn silver at dusk. Her colleagues called it a phase, she called it waking up. One evening she stopped at a small gallery on her way home. The window held black and white photographs, city corners, strangers, fragments of rain. A name in the corner caught her, Rowan Price. Inside, the space smelled of varnish and quiet conversation. He was there, talking to the curator, and when he saw her he smiled as though she'd stepped out of one of his pictures. Clara, he said. I wasn't sure I'd see you. I wasn't sure either, she replied. But I think your photos found me. She turned to the wall and froze. There it was, the pier at night, lights stretching into darkness, and at the edge of the frame, her figure looking out to sea. You took that. Had to, he said. The night reminded me that sometimes the best journeys aren't planned. Seems like we both needed that reminder. After that they met now and then, a walk through Borough Market, coffee on a rainy Tuesday, a quiet museum at lunchtime. They talked about pictures and words, about fear and small victories, and sometimes they didn't talk at all. The silence between them felt like trust. Months later, on a winter morning, Clara stood again at King's Cross, camera around her neck. Rowan joined her with 2 coffees. Where to this time? He asked. She smiled. Anywhere but the right platform. They laughed, the sound bright in the vaulted station. Around them the city hurried on, unaware that one small mistake had rewritten 2 lives. As their train pulled away, Clara looked out at the gray streets sliding past and thought of the first night she'd been here, tired and restless, afraid of being lost. Now she knew better. Sometimes the wrong train doesn't take you away from your life, it brings you to it.